Hello.
Hello,
Hello.
good to see you all again. Hello everyone who's watching. Welcome to our latest instalment of the Angular London Meetup online. Um, we've got a wonderful friend of ours joining us today. I first met Bonnie walking the halls of ngConf back in the day when you actually went to conferences rather than just looking at them on your computer screen. Hi, Bonnie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh,
How's
it's great.
London?
Yeah, it's great. A little bit cloudy as always today, but
Yep.
we're uh, we're fighting our way into the winter, I think. And so today, Bonnie's going to be telling us a little bit about one of the cool projects that she's been building up slightly secretly over the last year or so, but it's becoming more and more public. We're looking forward to hearing about that, and then some cool tech that she's been working on with her clients. We have got streaming going on YouTube and Facebook. And if you're on either of those two, then feel free to leave some comments, say hello to everyone. Also, any questions you should put in there, and we'll ask Bonnie to answer those at the end of her slides. And also, at the very end of everything, we'll be going to a Zoom call where you can hang out and network with everyone. So keep an eye out for the links to that will be coming up as well. So, is there anything I missed, Josh?
No, I think that's it. So if you do want to talk at any of these meetups, please let us know. We'd love to get some more people involved in this. But yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say, Bonnie.
All right, well, I'll just jump right in.
Great.
I'm gonna share my screen, and
Hopefully the
then I
tech
can't
will
see
work.
you guys anymore after I share my screen because Keynote's gonna take over all my displays. But I can still hear you, so just yell if you don't see anything. Let me see. Okay, can you see this?
Yeah, that's working.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Okay, so my name is Bonnie Brennan. I'm an Angular GDE and a panelist on Angular Air. I was the founder of ngHouston, I think, back in 2015. It seems like such a long time ago now. And most recently, I'm the founder now of AngularNation.net, which is kind of what I want to talk about today because it's kind of new, so I want to let everybody know about it. Before I jump in, I have to give a shout out to my friends James Dutton and Matt Carniato because I met them at Angular Connect just a couple years ago, and so I want to say hello since we're back in London virtually. And okay, so jumping in, I want to talk about Angular Nation. And just to give a brief, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because I have some code that I want to talk to you guys about. And so we're gonna get through the slides and then we're gonna jump in and nerd out over some code. But first, I want to talk about this because I got the domain for Angular Nation from Jeff Welpley back in 2017, but I didn't know what to do with it. Like for the longest time, I was trying to figure out. Like I wanted to do something for. I mean, it's just a cool domain, right? Angular Nation. I was like, I don't know what to build. Something for the community, but I didn't know exactly what. And I wanted some type of like a Stack Overflow Reddit kind of like I wanted us to be able to collaborate and talk to each other more because when I first started with Angular, I was working completely by myself and I was struggling a lot. And when I started collaborating with other developers who were using Angular, I mean obviously it helped a lot, right? So I really wanted to do that, but I didn't know how because I just felt like we already have all this stuff out there. And then in 2019, it was probably about this time last year that I found through Yoga with Adrienne, and I love Adrienne. She was talking about Mighty Networks, which I started learning more about, and I absolutely loved it. So I grabbed this software and I started kind of working on this. And I didn't know exactly how it would work, but we actually launched it in May of this year. We launched it a little bit early because of the coronavirus. We just really wanted people to be able to go on there and have a place to talk to each other, and it's completely free. So we really wanted, yeah. So anyway, I want to talk about why I did that. When I first started getting involved in the community and speaking at Angular conferences, and most of the speakers were using Twitter. And so I followed my favorite people on Twitter, and pretty soon I had a pretty great Twitter feed that was almost entirely Angular. It was awesome. And so for some people that might seem kind of boring, but for me, like that's all I used Twitter for. And so I loved it. And it was such a good place to keep up with the community and events and announcements and everything. So for years, that's been working great for me, and I haven't had any problems. However, in the past few years, we've started to see a lot of things changing, and we've even seen warnings about the harmful influence of social media. We've got, influencers and YouTube personalities and bots and trolls and just kind of scary stuff going on. I've seen articles that the algorithms these people use are like intentionally divisive and harmful, and it's kind of scary, right? Unfortunately, it seems to be very effective with propaganda. And I don't want to talk about politics, so I'm going to keep moving. But I've just seen some stuff that's really bothering me, and it's more and more like taking over my Twitter feed. Right? Some of this stuff I actually really do care a lot about, but again, it's just very stressful, and sometimes it's hard to get away from it. The point that I want to make is that now more than ever, social media can be harmful to our mental health, and like I want to know about this stuff, but at the same time, I had carefully cultivated my Twitter so that it was all Angular because it was for tech. I want to be able to go and focus on my work, and kind of forget about the world for a little bit. And it wasn't able to, I couldn't do that anymore, right? So there's just so much stuff going on that's stressful and harmful. So with the economy and the pandemic and all the crazy stuff that's going on in the world, I think that we're probably all grateful to be programmers right now, because we might feel helpless about a lot of things, but at least we can still work and we can kind of focus on what we can do and forget about the current events, at least briefly. It helps me a lot. But the problem is that, even Twitter and Facebook, like these, there's so much invasive stuff going on, and it's stressful. So, okay, so it used to be public networks, social networks, right? And then it became social media, and it kind of became something else. So it's like we don't have control anymore over what we see, and other people are deciding what gets presented to us. But we still need to be networking now more than ever. Really, we need to be networking with other people, and we can't get together with our conferences. Like I love the conferences. I met some of my absolute favorite people at these Angular conferences, and I've had so much fun. And I really want to keep in touch with these people. And so, every time we go to Twitter, it's like, it's just full of stressful stuff. But also I want to kind of sift through it and find all this good stuff too. And this is why I made the decision back in May to launch Angular Nation early. So Angular Nation, and like I said, it's free to join. All you need is an email address. We're not doing any advertising. We're not doing data mining. I don't like that kind of stuff. You can have notifications, but you have total control. So you don't need to get any kind of spam or anything like that. But basically I wanted to have a place where people could go on and talk, and maybe even a little bit more in depth, rather than just asking a quick question. Like we can talk more about, hey, has anybody had this problem, or how would you recommend this? It's been going really well, and we're having some great discussions. I really wanted it to be welcoming for beginners, because I know, when I was a beginner, I would go on Stack Overflow and they weren't very nice to me, right? So I wanted it to be a place where beginners would feel welcome, and I really tried to give it that feel. But also, the questions that they're asking are not exactly beginner questions. So we're having advanced questions and beginner questions all kind of mixed in, but people are so nice. Okay, so it does look a little bit like Twitter, but one of the things that I like a lot about this Mighty Networks platform that I love is that we have topics, right? So we have all these different topics, and every time somebody posts something, which is like, you can post links or questions or anything just like Twitter, but you can also tag it with a topic. And so this makes it super easy for everybody to go back if you want to talk about, like if you want to see what people are saying about NGRX or, GraphQL or anything like that, you can just go and find all the latest things by topic. So I love that interface. So far I think we have, 20 or 30 topics, Angular JS, CLI, schematics, elements, material, lots of people talking about state management. We've got some Scully fans and RxJS. We have a lot of, NX fans and NGRX fans. We have a lot of people, asking questions and getting answers to those questions. We also have some of the authors and core team members directly answering questions about some of this stuff. So that's very nice, because I don't know everything there is to know about Scully, but we have Sonder and he does. So so it's been really fun. So there's a couple of months worth of stuff in there now, but there are new people joining every day. And like I said, it's free. We also have a bunch of channels. So this is something that's kind of new, right? We have free community meetup channels that people can join, because we see a lot of like Angular London, right? We see a lot of these meetups that used to be in person are going online because people are trying to keep in touch, but they're kind of scattered everywhere. And so I'm trying to get them in here and post so that people can go in here and see like what is everybody talking about, and also the different meetups have YouTube channels that are great, but they have different topics every month. So what I'm doing, I'm doing it by myself, but I'm trying to, when I post these, and I saw Jeffrey Bosch in the chat tonight, and he's been amazing helping with this stuff too, because he's helping a lot. But what we do is we try to post them and tag them with a topic, so that no matter which meetup it is, if you're searching for that topic, that you'll find the latest meetup talks about that. So that's been going really well, and I think it's much easier to find things, hopefully. So one thing that we were surprised about when we started Angular Nation was that, because like I said, I tried to make it very welcoming for beginners, but we were going in, and when we had 1,000 people join in the first week that we launched, which was amazing, and we were not expecting that. We were not prepared for that, but it was pretty exciting. And so I started asking them questions about what kind of things they want to learn about, and what kind of things they're struggling with, and what we can do to help. And one of the things that we asked was, how well do you feel you know Angular? And as you can see from this picture, a lot of people, we thought we would have a lot of beginners, but we don't. We actually have a lot of senior architects and people asking some more advanced questions, which is super exciting. So Samantha and I had been working on a beginner's course, which was just like a, Hello World Angular course for beginners. But when we saw the questions that people were asking and the things that people were struggling with, we pivoted and we started working on Angular Architect training, which we finished. We launched the first class in August, and we're just wrapping up the very first group. That's been super, super fun. So we just opened up registration, I think, yesterday or the day before, for our next group, which starts September 14th. So if you're interested in small group architect training, so what we're doing. I really didn't know, because at first I just put like everything I wanted to put in this training, and it was a lot. It was just way too much information. It was very overwhelming. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to focus on, because I've done a lot of enterprise consulting and I've worked with a lot of different teams, and I wanted to focus on like the biggest things that teams are struggling with when they get to the enterprise level and kind of paint themselves into a corner. I've seen some pretty bad performance issues, and I've seen some people struggling with state management and things like that. And so I really wanted to talk about the things that seem to be the most common problems and how to fix those. But I didn't want it to be too terribly complicated, so I tried to keep it simple. And so we move through a lot of material quickly, but then we have office hours. Every Tuesday we have a content session where we present, curriculum. And then Thursdays we have office hours where the students come in and ask us specific questions about the things that they're working on. And this has been super fun. It's going very well. I love the fact that, instead of just watching a video, that we can actually talk about the things that they're working on and what kind of apps they're working on, because we're moving quickly. We cover a lot of things, and then we say, let us know. And when we go into office hours, then we deep dive more into those topics that the students care about. So that's been super fun. Samantha's been helping me every step of the way. She's been doing some great visuals and slides to help everybody understand the concepts that we're talking about. And we're playing some games. We have some icebreakers. The students are talking to each other and forming friendships. That's been really cool. Anyway, so we have architect training again, September 14th. And we also have some free courses. We have a free RxJS beginners course from Jan Nicholas. We have a free Angular schematics course from Natalia that are there. Okay, so like I said, there's a lot of free stuff. Then we have the premium courses. We have more premium courses coming. Okay, one more thing I want to tell you before we jump into the code. We have this Baker's Dozen Scholarship. The reason why I created this is because I think we really try to make the course a great value, but also some parts of the world, the currencies are different, and it makes any kind of training like this prohibitively expensive. So we started the Baker's Dozen Scholarship for underrepresented groups in tech. So for every 12 tickets that we sell for the premium courses, we're going to give one away for free to an underrepresented group, just to try to even things up a little bit. We have 2 people approved this week waiting for tickets right now. And we also offer a sliding scale if they don't want to wait. So if you're interested in a scholarship or a sliding scale, please reach out to me and let me know. If you want to take this course and it's just not something you can afford, then you let me know, because I really want to talk to you and see if I can help. Okay, so that's it. That is all the slides. And I want to shut this off now so we can nerd out over a little bit of code. I'm going to take a break first and see. I want to check with Pete and Josh to see if we have any questions. And if not, we can jump into the code.
I think we're good to.
Hey, Bonnie, that was cool. That was really cool. Well done. I had a quick question. If you are from an underrepresented group, how easy is it to apply to be one of your Baker's Dozen?
Yeah, so there's a link. So every time we announce a new group, then we'll have a link at the bottom for the Baker's Dozen, and they just fill out a form and basically say, how it would help them. And I mean, it's really not meant to be like, I don't want it to be complicated. I want to make this, because I've seen it's a huge problem. So I really want to make this. I can't like give away all the tickets because I have to pay my bills. But that's why when we do the Baker's Dozen, where we can try to really keep more people coming in and keep that going. But again, I'm making this up as I go along, right? So I really want feedback, and that's why I also introduced the sliding scale so we could try a couple different things and see how it works. But I just want to make it achievable, because especially if you live in those areas of the world where tech is this training is crazy expensive. But that's really where tech is such an equalizer, because if you can get a good education, then it really opens up a lot of doors. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can open some doors.
If anyone does have any questions out there, just post a comment and we can bring them on screen and ask Bonnie any questions. She's obviously very eager for questions.
We're all so excited to see your code.
I miss Angular Connect so much.
I miss Angular Connect too. I was going through some pictures the other day, and I was really fine. Like, I have so much fun at Angular Connect, and I found a lot of cool people that I liked a lot, and I missed it. And we're supposed to have Angular. I was going to be there again this year, and I was very much looking forward to it. It was on my calendar the other day, you guys. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to fly to London.
Yeah.
But next year,
so we'll be back with a bang.
Having
Bonnie there.
Yeah. Well, here I am. Okay, so I want to jump in. Huh?
We'll let you carry on now.
Yeah, I want to jump in, and I just want to talk about some code. This is actually a pattern. So I wrote this code for a client a couple years ago, and it took a couple weeks because it was like kind of the first time I did this. It was difficult, and it took a while to get it working. But I wrote this code a couple years ago, and then I found myself using it again and again because I was going, to a couple different clients, and I kept implementing this same code, and it's just always been super helpful. And it's not terrible. It was a little complicated the first time to get it working, but once I got it working, I don't think the code is terribly complicated, but I think it's just cool. And I've shared this with a lot of my clients, and they like it a lot. So it's actually out there on GitHub. I'm going to walk through this code, and I don't want you guys to worry about, trying to copy it, because it's out there on GitHub, and, I'll have Pete and Josh tweet out a link, or we'll put a link in the slides. So it's out there on GitHub, and you can see it and you can copy it. And I've actually thought about making this an NPM library, but I decided not to. And I want to talk again about why I decided not to, because it's not that much code, right? You're welcome to copy it, but I really want to explain to you what's going on with this repo and why I think it's so cool. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. And first, I'm just going to show you, and let me just put this over here. No, I'm going to put this over here so I can see what's going on. Let me get myself together here. Okay, so this is a super, super simple reactive form. I'm using reactive forms for this demo because reactive forms is actually what I built this component on for my client, because that's what they needed. However, the pattern that and really the concept that I want to talk to you about, it doesn't need to be reactive forms. It's basically the concept of a dynamic wrapper, right? So we've got, I just made this demo super, super simple. First name, last name, phone number, email address, right? This is very typical. And then when we go into the code, let me see if that is, I'm going to close this so we can have more room here. I hope let me know if that's not big enough. But basically, and again, I don't think this is too complicated. These are material form fields inside of a mat grid, right? So this is Angular material. And I'm assuming that you guys are pretty familiar with Angular material. If you're not, the documentation is amazing. So I'm not going to really go into any of that right now. But basically, this is Angular material form fields. And there are a bunch of them. So this is, I think, very, very typical Angular. This is something that I've seen over and over again. This is a very typical implementation of reactive forms. This is reactive forms, right? So you've got your form control names over here. You've got your input types, your mat input, and then over here on the right, you've got your coordinating TypeScript. And again, you've got your first name, last name. You could use the form builder so that you don't have to type new form control all these times. But basically, like I said, I wanted to keep this pretty simple. We've got a couple of drop downs here with, very simple strings. So the thing is, this is what I see over and over and over again, right? This is what I see a lot of developers working on. And I've actually had teams where I'm leading a team and I see them doing this over and over. And maybe you're thinking what I'm thinking when I look at this. I hope if we sit here and look at this, what's wrong with this code, right? Hold on. I can see the comments. I'm checking the comments to see. No, because there's a delay, so I'm not going to wait. But okay, what's wrong with this code is it's not dry, right? It's kind of dry, but it's not dry. And so this is where I always push back with the developers on my team. And I say, guys, this is not dry. And they say, well, because we can't repeat it. We can't just do an ngFor because this one is a text field and this one is a drop down and maybe there's a checkbox. And so they're not the same, right? So it's not dry. It's kind of dry, but it's not dry. And this is where I see over and over again. Here, Pete's asking me to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so I zoomed. I hope that's okay. Let me know if it's not, Pete. So what I see over and over again is like it's kind of dry, but it's not dry, right? So there's a balance here because we don't want to go and create a crazy dynamic, complicated dynamic component for everything, right? Because once you make a dynamic component, it's obviously more complicated than just hard coding it. But, and this is where I say, like, I don't want to say everybody needs to have this, dynamic component, this dynamic form field component. And I don't even want to say that everybody should use this, dynamic reactive forms because it really depends on what you're seeing a lot in your own project. So if you're doing a lot of reactive forms, which I've seen so many clients that are doing reactive forms, and I've seen a lot of clients where the reactive forms look like this. And this is why, like, I didn't mean for this to be something that I used over and over again, but it became something I used over and over again because this is the kind of thing that I saw a lot when I was consulting with clients. So if you only have one or two, if you have a contact us form, then you don't need a dynamic form. You just go ahead and hard code it. It's no big deal. But I had one client that had 19 pages of forms and they all looked like this. And this is where I was like, hold on, let's stop the HTML and go get this dynamic form component that I created. So in order to make something like this, the first thing that we're going to start with is a model. And I just want you to look at this model for a minute and kind of see how we're going to create this, right? We have a field type, and this is where the field type is where we're going to swap them out, right? Once you've got that field type, basically inside of each field type is just going to be whatever's inside here, right? So if you take your map form field for each one, you got a map form field input text type. You got another map form field if you want to have a select drop down. I think those are the only two examples in here, but you get the idea, right? So we defined, over time this grew as I used it with more and more clients, but we defined a couple of different field types here. And then we have to have, and I mean, hopefully if you guys are using TypeScript, you've already embraced the strict typing, right? We have to have an interface so that we can create a UI, right? This was something that I struggled with when I first started coding because I didn't always know what the field types were. And that's the struggle with everybody. But I mean, once you have these field types, then it's really, this is half the thing with dynamic components right here is just you have to have the interface. And if you have the interface, it makes the HTML super easy, right? And the other thing that I used a lot, and this is not specific to Angular, this is just something that I found even when I was back doing PHP, right? A key value pair, it's just a key and a value, and this is something that's, I think, kind of global for computer science. This was something that I didn't really discover when I first started programming, and so I try to say the stuff that I think the more experienced developers, this becomes obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me when I started, so I try to make sure to say that kind of stuff. So with a key value pair, by the way, what I would do is I would have an array of key value pairs, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute when we're going to go into what the dynamic code actually looks like. But for now, like I said, this is where it starts. And this is what I want you to look at. Once you've got this model, then it's pretty easy to take this. And to me, like the first few times I did it, it was difficult. I think the biggest reason why this is difficult, and again, goes back to why I wanted to create Angular Nation, because the first time I did this, and I saw Deborah Carrata has a fabulous course on reactive forms on Pluralsight. I still am a huge Deborah Carrata fan. I love Deborah Carrata. So if she's watching, hello, Deborah Carrata. But there were so many, the docs are very good. There's so many examples out there. The problem that I ran into is when I start going more, and probably you guys find this too, when you start really pushing more dynamic stuff and you're going into more advanced stuff, all of the articles and the examples and the tutorials out there just sometimes don't cut it anymore, right? Because once I started, so when I'm using reactive forms like this, there are a million tutorials out there. So this is super easy stuff, right? But when I start going into try to like, how can I pass a reactive form field from one component to another? Or how does that work? Like that got a little crazy. And that's why, like I said, before I jump into this next part, I want to remind you, it's all on GitHub. This actual demo is on GitHub and it's working. So you can go and copy it. That's fine. So I don't want to stress you out. And I don't think I will, because I think it's pretty easy. Well, again, I say that. I shouldn't say that because I've been looking at it for years, so it's easy for me. Okay, so let's look at the demo. Well, before we look at I'm going to show you that last because that's where it's cool. I want to actually show you the form. Let's start with this one. I'm going to close this. And I'm going to close this. Okay, so this is kind of where the magic happens. And I'm going to start with this first because I think this is pretty easy to visualize. So this is a switch case, and I'm assuming that you guys know a switch case, so I'm not going to cover it too much, but basically it's a switch, right? It's a switch case. So what we do is at the top here, we say, give me the field type. And remember the field type was from that enum that I showed you, right? So it's either going to be a text box or a drop down or a toggle, whatever. So then once we've got that, then based on this, we use the switch case to define which one we're going. So inside of each one of these, right, we've got a checkbox, a date picker, a single radio. And inside each one of these, we've got that map form field. And again, this is just super simple Angular material. I didn't change any of this. So this is just an Angular date picker. We've got a single radio. And this is very, very close to just the straight Angular material docs. So there's not really a whole lot of code in here except what I put in to iterate through. Okay, so we've got the switch cases here. We've got our different field types, and this is the HTML. So when we go into this dynamic field, this is not we're going to come back to this because I want to show you this and I want to talk to you about why this is so cool because it looks so tiny. What on earth is a form group directive? I've never seen people really talk about that. It was kind of an obscure thing, but I want to come back to this. Okay. So when we talk about the dynamic form component, right, this is, and I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to kind of talk you through this briefly, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because I'm going to tell you right now what I'm doing in this file in a simple manner. I want to iterate through an array, right? So I actually want to go and show you the, where did it go? Where's the model? Here's the model. Open this to the side. Okay, I want to keep going back to this, right? Because I just want to keep things simple. So when I have a field, right? And a field is one of these. Each field has a field type. So the field type is required. And the name is required because we need the name for the form control name for reactive forms, right? So each field has to have a unique name and a type. And then beyond that, all of these are optional. And if you're using reactive forms at all, these are all probably going to look pretty familiar for you. Okay, so the only thing that we need is a name and then a type. Once we have that, we're going to iterate through an array. So this, there's a field set, right? And a field set is an array of fields. So what we're going to do in this field is we're going to go down, we're going to iterate through an array of form fields, and then we're going to initialize a reactive form, right? So we're going to initialize the form, and then we're going to iterate through and initialize each form field. And I know I'm going through this pretty quickly because, again, I don't want to spend too much time, and all of this code is available. But when we look at this, right, especially if you're already using reactive forms, what I want you to notice about this, let's get this out of the way here. This is probably stuff that you've seen before, right? This is a dot for each. We're iterating through a collection. This is this dot form add control. So the code inside these functions is pretty simple. I hope it's, and I want to keep it simple because I like it that way. Once we go through with the form control, we're going to look and we're going to check for default values. We're going to see, and we're going to handle some validation, things like that. So we're going to do a kind of different depending on the client, because some clients want slide toggles, and you might have different requirements here. But again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, because the point is we're going to initialize each form control here. So we have each form and the form control, initialize all of that. And then what I like about this also, this is actually my favorite. Well, this is not. This was something that I did for a client, and I left it in there because I thought it was pretty cool. We're having the slide toggle Boolean will hide and show the fields underneath it. So you could have child fields under the slide toggle. But this is what I wanted to show you here. This was a pain to write. It took me a little bit, but once I got it going, this just takes all, remember we talked about that key value pair earlier, right? The key value pair is very clean. And this is how I learned over years to take kind of code that was getting a key value array is something that I've found comes in handy in a lot of ways, because I really want to make it very simple. So when I'm passing this, if we go back up here, we've got an emit at the top, emit form values, right? What I want to do is I just want to have that output that goes back to the parent, because remember, this is dynamic. So whatever page I'm in, and I'm going to show you this page here in a minute, whatever page I'm in, I just want to tell the page, and I don't want the page that I'm in to have to deal with any kind of reactive form, anything. So what I'm going to do is right before I emit it, I'm going to clean those values from the form, because you've got the form.control.key. So I'm going to get those form values and just put them into a super clean array of key value pairs and then send them up. So we have each form key and then each value, and it's going to be super simple. So the way that works, I have one more thing. Okay, before we leave here, I want to show you one more thing, because when I was, let me show you the HTML in this one, I think should look pretty simple. I commented out this NGX error because I updated it recently and I didn't update this. But this is just an ng4 let field of field set, right? So remember we had an array with the field set, an array of fields. And so we're just going to iterate through here. So for each field in the field set, we're going to use this dynamic field. The dynamic field component is the one I showed you a minute ago that just has a switch case in it, right? But when I did this, when I first wrote this, I actually started going down a whole entire rabbit hole. And this is where I want to stop y'all, because I don't want you to do what I started to do. Let's go back and look over here. Okay, so remember, we've got this parent. So we've got the dynamic form and the dynamic field. And the dynamic form iterates through fields, right? You following me? So I want to go back now to the child. So here's the parent component and here's the child component. And what I had happening in here accidentally was I started passing, I needed to have I was trying to get it, I was actually trying to use that NGX errors, I think. And so what I needed was the, form.valid, form.dirty, form. All that dirty, pristine, touched, all that stuff. I was trying to access that. And what I was doing was I was starting to pass each one of those values. I was like getting it in the child and then passing it for each one individually. And before you know it, I had like 10 different inputs and outputs. And I see this so much. This is something that happens to all of us. And I was like, stop the madness, right? I don't want to have all these different inputs and outputs. And so I stopped, and I probably spent an entire day, maybe 2 days researching this before I finally found what I was looking for. So I couldn't find it anywhere. It was this. So this little form group directive, which again is obscure, but this is why I want to talk about this. I put a link to the API here. All I had to do was And I mean, it seems so tiny and simple, right? All I had to do was this right here, this dot control, this dot form group directive control dot get, and then pass through the name and do it as, so this line right here, I mean, this one component was getting up to almost 100 lines of code, because for everything that I was doing, I had to go get it and pass it. I had to deal with this observable or some type of value changes. I had to watch all this stuff, and I was just writing more and more and more code, right? And that's really the number one thing that I see when I'm consulting, that I've seen over and over again, and I try to teach people not to do that, is they just keep on writing more and more code. So any component that you see that's getting bigger and bigger, you got to stop and push back and say, how can I do this in a clean way? And I find little amazing things like this. So this allowed me, so I have this one line of code here, right? But if I go back up here, and look here, and especially, and I know it's commented out right now, but it was working, and I just didn't update it. So the thing is, when I'm looking at this, if I look at line 4 right here, just this field, I can access in the parent everything about this. I can access all of the reactive forms magic in this, and then I can do all of the data validation, error checking, any of that kind of stuff that I want to do here very easily. Okay, so I want to go now and show you. I know we didn't talk about this a whole lot because, like I said, I didn't want to spend a ton of time on it, but I'm happy to talk to you guys about this more. You can find me over at Angular Nation, ask me all kinds of questions. I love this code and I use it all the time. But I think, and hopefully, because again, especially on this part, I don't know if you guys saw, there are comments all in here, because I really wanted this. I use this for training and teaching a lot. I've trained a lot of junior developers with this code, and so I really tried to make it very self-explanatory. It's a lot of comments, so go look at it on GitHub. But I want to go back and show you. Okay, so first we're going to look at the demo without dynamic form. What we started with when we came in here was this here, right? This is very typical. I see this a lot. Now we're going to look at the exact same page with the dynamic form, and I want you to see what that code looks like. It's right there. So you're passing in a field set. Let's see the constants. We've got a constants file here. This is really where now all of the hard-coded stuff comes, because this is what I've been and this is, again, the biggest lesson that I want you guys to take away from this is not about reactive forms, right? This pattern it has nothing to do with reactive forms, because I've used the same pattern for high charts, right? There's a client that was doing a lot of charts. There's a client that was doing a lot of pop-up dialogues, and so we use this kind of wrapping it in this and passing these dynamic fields through. But the number one thing that I'm training every single developer that I've worked with is pull the constants out of the business logic. Anytime, because this is really where I think when we go into this, where you have a regular developer becoming a senior developer, and even going even more beyond that, when you start to outgrow the tutorials, then a lot of people hard code it because there isn't any tutorial that shows you, and it's a little bit more complicated. And that's where I would say, if you get to that point where you're doing things that are too complicated that you can't find any tutorials out there for what you're doing, please reach out, start talking to people in the community, start asking questions. Because I think this is actually how I became friends with Wes Grimes, because he was kind of doing something similar to what I was doing when I was working on this. And I never heard of him and he never heard of me, and we just started randomly trying to figure it out together. And it was super helpful. So if you get to that point where you're trying to do something and you're trying to take it to the next level and extract something out and make it more dynamic, and you're outgrowing tutorials, this is a really good problem to have. And that's where you have to come and be a part of the community. Okay, so I want to just show you a little bit. I think this is done, and then we're going to jump into Q&A. So we have, this is our constants array, right? Remember I said we just want an array and we want to keep it simple. So here's an array with a name and type. And then there's some pre-filled data. This again is a key value pair. This is what a key value pair looks like. I'm not that creative when it comes to my demos. I think, let me see if there was anything else I wanted to show you on here. We've got the new form. That's what it looks like. This also, you saw, this is it, right? We're just passing this There's nothing here because it's super simple. The idea is that once we have that dynamic reactive form, and again, I thought about making this into a lib. The reason why I never made this into a lib, really, I'm very picky about the libs that I bring into my, if you look at the most complicated part of this whole thing, which was this file, where is it? Well, it was the TypeScript where we did the extract value, right? If you look at let me go back to it one more time. Because this is the most complicated part. Most of this file is comments, right? It's not that much code. The reason why I don't want this to be an NPM library is because I don't want you to just download it. I don't want you to have another dependency. I want you to, you're welcome to read this and copy it. But really, the most important thing that I want you guys to take from this is I want you to learn how to do this, and I want you to do this yourself. I want you to think on this level. And if you try to do something like this and it's difficult, reach out, come to me and talk to me, show me what you're doing, and I can help. But it's just the idea that you got to get the constants out of the business logic. That is the number one thing. If you can pull your constants out into see, I jump around. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I think you guys get the idea. This is on GitHub, so you can go look at it. But the point is that if you pull your anything that you have hard coded in your code, if you pull it out into an array and just loop through the array in so many different situations, and you can loop through an array. Even the ngFor allows you to make a custom component and then loop through the array right there in your components. It's very easy to do. Maybe sometimes the code is a little bit more complicated, but the thing is that if you find yourself like the one client that I had, if you find yourself with 19 pages, if you're making 19 different reactive form components that are very, very similar to each other, that's where you got to stop and do something like this. Okay, so that's it. What do you think of that?
Thank you, Bonnie. That's really cool. It was really great to see, like, really get dug into the what's going on behind the scenes there, and it was really I really like that one-liner that's gonna just save everyone.
The form control directive. I know. I was so I think only a real nerd can appreciate how excited I was when I found that, because literally it was like 100 lines of code right there, and I just wiped it all out, and I was like, oh wow, does that really work? Because I love console logs, and so what I do is as soon as I get it in the parent, I console log it because I want to see everything that's available. And when I did that, when I wrote that code and then I passed it to the parent, and I was like, I have everything I could ever want. In that, I was like, that's cool, and I want to tell everybody, but I think people might think it's boring. But for me, it's very exciting. I love it. Anyway, this whole demo, I think, is to me, it's I don't want to say that because it's not simple, right? It was hard when I first wrote it, but now it seems common sense to iterate through an array, right? But I see this so many clients that I go into and I go, look at all these components you're writing. They're all almost identical. And so that's why I want to show this, and I want to start showing. And this is also one of the things that I'm teaching in the architect course.
Cool. So we do have some questions for you. We'll start with Pete, because Pete likes to always add a few questions. So I'll let him ask questions. One.
Which one was it? Oh, okay. So I didn't see, I wasn't able to see where you stored or got the actual definitions for each field that you wanted to show. And I was wondering, would you imagine maybe that this would be super dynamic? Like maybe the fields would be stored in an array that you would, like a database where you would go and pull them down, and then someone in the business could actually specify the fields rather than the developer.
The first client that I wrote that for, that's the way it was set up. That all of the fields were stored in a database. But it was crazy because there was all kinds of mapping, because it was an old database, and it was a crazy stuff. But yeah, ideally that would be, and this is where I don't really put any styling on it, so people can style it. But the dynamic form as it is on GitHub is super, super, super simple. But yeah, you're meant to pass in an array of form fields, and that array of form fields can come from anywhere. And it could be tiny. It could be 2, it could be 17, because this is the thing. I started to, and this is a trap that I fall into a lot with clients, where if I'm not careful, because I get busy, right? If I'm not paying attention, I start to customize that more and more and more. And then I go, no, you know what? No, because if I just keep the dynamic form component the way it is, and it's like you can put, there's no styling in it, then it's just very simple to put it in. Like you can put, if you want to have a tab interface, and I started to put that inside and I was like, no, because you could just make 5 different arrays at 5 different dynamic fields because they don't have any styling. You could put them in a grid. You could put them in whatever you want, however you want to do it. And I keep that super, and I've really come so close to making an NPM library because it was popular, but I'm like, I think it's better for teaching because I don't want them to have another dependency.
I think that leads on nicely to this question in terms of how you then control the layout. And I think like you
absolutely
said, you can play around with that. You've got flexibility by just having different arrays, right?
Because I didn't want it to have any UI overhead at all. And see, this is the thing. This really proves my point, because even the fact that it's in Angular material, because one of the students in our last architects group, he was like, well, we don't use Angular material. And I said, that's the beauty. That's why I didn't make it an NPM library. Because you can go and get it and put, if you want to put Kendo, or if you want to put PrimeNG, or you want to put your own CSS in there, that you can do that so easily. And that's why I littered it with all the comments so that you can read it, so that you can actually take it and do whatever you want to do with it.
So you could build another layer on top of it potentially to control more of the layout if you wanted to. For what
absolutely, you could. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Easy.
Okay. So
I think also someone mentioned in the comments that they use flex layouts to actually lay out the layout of the form fields afterwards. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's the thing. That's really why, because then you could do your flex layout and then put different form fields however you want.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
We've got another question from Mark. I favor typing forms tightly with schemas.
It's tying, not typing.
That makes more sense. And using the latter to drive the former. Have you considered doing that?
I mean, I love this guy. Shut up and take my money, Mark Chapman. Yeah, we would get along very well. Yeah, because this is the thing is reactive forms, I think, was the #1 thing that I found where I saw developers writing so much code, and it's all the same except for the actual text of the question, or and even that, like once you get like if they're all input fields. Right. And then there's like different fields, or even it doesn't even have to be reactive forms. Right. Because this is what I keep going back to. Reactive forms is just one example of this pattern. But I've even seen grids where we've got grids and there are a bunch of pages with grids, but there are different columns on each page. Right. And or different pagination on each page. And so they would actually hard code every column name. Well, if the whole page, if the whole component is the same except for the column names, then, load in an array of column names for each page and then hard code that. And then you don't have to do all these, because basically anytime you're looking at a bunch of components that are almost the same, then that's where you need this pattern. But also when you start writing code like that, that's where I very quickly outgrew the tutorials, and I was like alone in the wilderness, like, I don't know, Deborah Karada, tell me what to do, and it was hard. It was a little anxiety there.
Another question in terms of actually maintaining this pattern once you started going down this road. How do you see the best practice to maintain and control them?
I mean, so the nice thing about this is that once you have that one chunk of code there, I want to share my screen again, but I won't because we'll never finish this call, right? But basically, if you saw, I showed you the last part, right? The demo with reactive forms where it's just a tiny little bit of code. So basically, once you have the guts, right? Once you have the dynamic part written, all of your components now look like that tiny little thing, and it's just going to make you happy. So it's suddenly maintaining it becomes, I mean, you don't have that much code. You're just passing in an array. And then this is the great thing, Darks, because I would go to update this. If you've implemented something like this, And then a client comes along when you've got this implemented and say, hey, I want to add another form field. It's like, oh, goody, this is going to take me like 5 seconds, you know? And it's just, and that's really where maintaining it is just like, you know, I need some more work to do, because it's just that, like, that's where I would pass it along to the junior developers. And I'm like, I'm going to lunch, y'all, because you just update the array. Like, how easy could it be? You don't even have to dig through any code at all.
Okay, so someone's asking about where we can find all these examples.
Yes, that is such a good question.
Post the GitHub link onto.
I'm putting it right now in the chat, Josh, for you, because I don't think I can put it on GitHub, but I put it in the chat. It's a public repo. You guys can go and get it with my blessing. Please plagiarize all you want, and if you break it, just let me know. Money back guarantee.
So I'm posting that now, so you can have that. Okay, cool. And then Pete had another question, obviously, about validation.
Yes, that's a good question. Okay, so what I did was I used, I don't know if you know Todd Motto. Who doesn't know Todd Motto, right? I used Todd Motto's NGX errors. And this was a little bit tricky to get working. But, well, the whole thing was tricky in the beginning because I didn't know how to pass dynamic, because everything wanted a string, right? And so it was giving me an error message because it wanted a string and I was getting all mad. But once I figured that all out, I got it working. So there's a folder in that repo called the old reactive form. And so what happened was I just went, I don't remember when it was recently. I think it was just for this course. When I started my group of architects in Angular in August, I updated all of it to version 10. So it's now all updated. The repo is updated to Angular version 10. But I didn't update that part. So that was like the only part. So that's why it's commented out. So in the original version of it, before I updated it, and it was all working perfectly, the validation was working, and I just hadn't updated it yet. So I believe that you should be able to go and take that and put validation. You can put any kind of validation you want for it. I saw Zamakan also mention ngX formally, which is awesome, and I love ngX formally. I think validation will work. So the validation, basically, you would put into right there where you saw it commented out. Just swap that out with whatever you want. Put it there, and then you can see where the validation was, and you can copy it. And again, if you get stuck, come and let me know. I'll help you.
So following on from Zama Khan's comment about ngX formally, obviously there are some libraries out there that do this kind of thing. I'm also thinking like there are some grids and so on. At what point would you decide that actually, rather than doing a homegrown thing, you would actually switch to following a library, or should you? Is your general rule to try and stay with your own code as much as possible?
I would like to stay with my own code as much as possible until unless there's I'm really picky about bringing in any kind of overhead unless it's a super solid lib, because it's everything is another thing that I have to be responsible for, right? So basically every dependency is a liability. And there are some that are super, super solid. And obviously we know there are some libs out there that we can't live without. So I really don't want to rewrite a lib entirely. But yeah, I think that's an architectural decision for everybody. Just the point is just to be really picky, which I think we all kind of hopefully are. But I know ngX formally, I think, was originally written by Kent C. Dodds, and he's a solid guy. So I really, actually, that's like the first paid workshop I ever did was Kent C. Dodds back in the day. And he was a very good teacher, so you can't go wrong with Kent C. Dodds.
Cool.
So thank you very much, Bonnie. I think we're going to move on to the networking opportunity now. So the three of us will be there, and hopefully some of you guys will join us as well. Here are the Zoom details, and I've posted them in the comments as well. And thank you very much again for joining us, Bonnie. And it was all really interesting. And hopefully everyone will join us again in our next one. And if you want to speak, please get in contact with us.
And yeah, you want to grab this meeting ID now, because as soon as we stop the live feed, it will disappear for a few minutes. So if you want to join us, then make sure you grab it now.
Come and say hello.
We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you again, Bonnie. It's been wonderful.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming
It's been
and
good to be
sharing
here.
with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Bye.